What's up, y'all? I want to do a real quick story time before I do a podcast tomorrow night. I'm up late, of course, in the overnight, doing my tech support thing. I want to talk about a story time in the mid 90s, or should I say, was it be 95, 96? I went to high school around 97. Yep, I was in high school around 97. So I kind of want to talk about the difference in those later mid to late 90s than in comparison to what was going on now. You know, you hear about what's going on in Minneapolis, you hear about a lot of the carjackings, and you hear about all of these things that's going on with some of the youth and, some people that's even older that's involved in some of these shenanigans that's going on right now. And I don't know if they have summer programs for high school students and for people, I think it was under the age of 18. When I was in 7th and 8th grade, we used to go to like the Coyle Center, and each summer program, they used to always have like some little summer program. You get paid like $7 an hour, like $5 an hour or something like that, to kind of keep you out of trouble and things of that nature. To be honest, it seemed like things were a lot more plentiful. One would argue that there's more opportunities because of social media and things of that nature, but I don't know, it just seemed like things were a lot more plentiful. We at the age of 14, 15, 16, 17, you wasn't really thinking about getting a $200-300 plus Gucci belt or something like that. You might get a $200 pair of shoes. You might get some J's. Them gonna rack you up for 150. I mean, they always was around about 150 or whatnot, but you're really not gonna pay. We weren't thinking about Gucci belts and all of that kind of stuff. You got folks right now, maybe 17, 18, 19, 20. They're trying to. They're jumping off the rip. They trying to get a Gucci belt. You looking at a belt? I don't know how much them belts cost. They probably 3, 4, 500, maybe about $1,000 or so. As we got into our 20s and a little before that, I mean, unless you was a D-boy or had a strong hustle game, you wasn't really getting the pellies all like that. You might work a job and might be able to get some of them, but you ain't really gonna be able to get all the newest ones if you didn't come from an upper middle class family, or if you wasn't trapping. That just wasn't happening. You might get one of them, and then you might get a $200 pair of Timbs. But I'm talking about this from an economical standpoint. I worked at the What's Up Youth Info line when I might have been around 17 or something. I think that was a summer job. I might have been younger than that. I didn't like working there, and I ended up working at Hardee's, where the 35 Briggs failed. There was a Hardee's right on that corner. And going back to the workforce center, the workforce center was on Chicago and Lake. This is before we had a large immigrant population. You go on Chicago and Lake, and it'd be some fine ones there too. So you going up in that workforce center and you like a teenager or something like that, and you about 13, 14, 15, 16, whatever, for them summer programs, and it was women from all across the city, so it was almost like a little mini club up in there. You're learning some resume skills. People are goofing off and doing stuff like that, but I'm telling you, man, let me tell you, anybody that knows in South Minneapolis, if you went to the workforce center on some of them little summer programs where they were helping you with some jobs, man, look, it was some fine foundational Black American sisters up in there. I'm trying to tell you. And they didn't all go to your school, because I didn't really recognize none of them from the school when I was up in there. They was fine, and they was fly. And I remember this had to been maybe the late 90s and stuff. Late 90s, 2000, maybe 96 to 2000 or whatnot, when CompUSA Was it CompUSA on the corner, right off of not Nicollet Mall? There was a bus stop right there too. So this was during the LimeWire kind of Napster days. We could kind of go down there, get our little CDRs, hustle and get our roll on. I mean, life was kind of cool. You know what I'm saying? Like you could really get your roll on and get some money out. You know, you could really get a couple dollars. And because of our communication skills, there wasn't none of these phones like later on, brothers used to have the chirps, the no Nextel cell phones, and eventually the two ways came on, but stuff didn't really start getting real complex and complicated with camera phones and the social media. That came way later. That came after '05. Folks was still chirping around 2001, 2000. The chirp came out around 2000, 2001. They might have still been using it in 2003. But I remember seeing the Nextel chirp. I was around maybe 17 years old going to WOC. You know, so Napster, CompUSA, Fifth Element for hip hop. I'm just talking about the technology. You didn't really start getting into downloading your MP3s really all like that until later on. Well, I did download MP3s. You downloaded those. But folks started getting into the listening to the MP3. Folks started getting MP3 players later on. Folks was still having CD players. Dudes was riding around with CD players. If they had a CD player in their car, you might have somebody. A lot of people, well, okay, some people would burn the MP3s and make a data disc, and then they may use that. But a lot of people get used to just like the CDs. They just buy the CD and pop the CD in. You know, some people would buy the CD, they burn the CD, and then leave their original CD at home. Because sometimes your homies, hey man, let me borrow that or whatever the case may be. But I mean, I don't want to give you the original. I'll burn you one, or I'll burn one, and then you take the burn. That way you ain't got to worry about something happening to it. So I thought about some of the old jobs that I had. We used to have like the Brian Coyle Center. There was like a gardening project over there off of I think it was Cedar, kind of like Cedar and Franklin. The Mixed Blood Theater. There was multiple jobs for young black men and women. Multiple jobs for summer programs. When you're done with school, you could enroll into the summer program. Now you had to sign up early because you want to get what you want. You had to sign up early, but I don't know if they got that anymore. I'm not sure, and I'm not sure if it even pays enough where somebody young is really interested in it like that. I don't know. I don't know, but I was heavy into the computers and stuff like that. So even when I was in high school, I was building my own computers and I was selling mixtapes and I was getting my roll on. I'd have like a little BS job, but I would be getting my roll on. Most dudes was hustling. They wasn't really selling mixtapes back then like that. Dudes was hustling. Dudes was slanging. They wasn't really patient enough to kind of sit there and figure out a computer and do things like that. But that was a lot of my customer base. So like I say, LimeWire and Napster, and eventually the Smack DVDs came and stuff like that. It was a beautiful thing, man. It seemed like everybody was getting a couple bucks. I didn't really see young people 17, 18. They wasn't on no fentanyl, or you rarely see a crackhead 16, 17. You don't really see dudes just kind of laying out on the street. I don't really recall dudes asking me for change until I got into my 20s and in my mid, later on. You see grown men asking for change and stuff like that. You might see it downtown where you're walking around and dudes asking for change, but man, that was a thing of that wasn't a big thing, man. When you were 16, 17, dudes wasn't doing that. Guys will look at you funny style if you start asking them for money. Like, man, what's going on with you? There was so much money going on in the 90s. It felt like it just felt like everybody had a piece of change. If you had some hustle, If you had some hustle about you, you were able to make a couple bucks because somebody may want something. You might sell a radio, you might sell a CD, um, you might do some car repair. You know, even the fiends, even the crackheads, they fix your car. They'll throw on a starter and an alternator, man. Somebody might give them a rock and they'll throw an alternator on it, and you don't necessarily got to buy the alternator. They may have stole the alternator from CompUSA or from AutoZone or something. So I mean, you know, it wasn't like how it was here. You know, and for any young people that's listening, it gets. I mean, I'm not real old, but I'm just saying, like, it's 2001. I mean, it's 2024, so you look at 20 years or so. You know, like, things change pretty quick. Things change pretty quick. So, me getting out of high school 2001, streaming wasn't around. I mean, it wasn't that stuff was primitive. It just, you know, they didn't have streaming. You had MP3s and you had a CD player. You know, and we really didn't listen to vinyl, you know, so. But, no, I just kind of want to talk about the 90s. I want to give a little story time about the 90s and, you know, how much fun we had and how pure it was. It wasn't none of this garbage on TV. Of course, we didn't have TikTok and stuff. Facebook came later in like 06, 07, was it 08? A little later. 09. I think 09 when Facebook came about. 08 and stuff, we had stuff like Black Planet and all that, MySpace, you know, but a real social media platform, we were just scratching the surface then. You know, we were just scratching the surface then, you know. And now they're talking about, you know, they're wanting to ban TikTok, which really they want to take that conglomerate and pass that over to the dominant society here in America. So they'll be able to modify and control things as they see fit. We'll filter out this. If folks is getting on code globally, we'll put a stop to that. We'll change some of the algorithms. They'll do things like that. But I can't imagine how it would be if there would have been social media back then. That would have been very interesting. You know, but like I say, folks was outside. You know, you had to call somebody's phone or hit them on the pager, or, you know, we had the cell phone where it might have been minutes. It might have been 600 minutes a month, and then after 7 o'clock it's free, you know. So, and then eventually a couple of years later they could start doing the unlimited thing, but everything was on site. Everything was on site, constructive and non-constructive. Anything constructive and non-constructive was on site. You had to be there. You had to be present. You know, so, but no, I was just thinking about the Workforce Center. I was looking at this article earlier, and I want to talk more about this on my podcast. They got this thing called the Department of Labor and Industry, and I was just looking at some of the validated pyramids and occupational competency summaries. I'm going to break down a little bit about that. I didn't really do too much Black history stuff as much as I wanted to for, you know, Black History Month. So I'm going to get out of Black History Month and get into more Black History Year. We shouldn't just have one month while we're talking about Black history and what a lot of our grandmaster teachers and pioneers have taught us. This should be a monthly, daily, if not a weekly thing, where we're comparing notes and seeing what was done, because it puts you in a different mindset. It puts you in a very constructive mindset. And I want to cover some of those competencies, because most of the stuff is like, when you hear about some of these occupations and things, you think about theory. But then there's also some other words that you want to kind of get within your vocabulary, I'll say. It's a nice thing to have. It's a nice thing to have, because it starts getting you into a very constructive mindset. These are things that I've already seen before, but I started reading it so I could just stay constructive. You know what I'm saying? So I'll cover that. Tomorrow night I'm gonna make sure tomorrow night that I do another podcast. I was supposed to have done one on Saturday, but I got tied up with some other little stuff. So Y'all stay tuned. I'm gonna go ahead and load up this story time.